Hello, listeners, and welcome to the latest episode of the AdQuick Advertising Podcast, a podcast that explores the intersection of technology, advertising, culture, all of the things that you care about. Today, we have a special guest. We have Mo from Veridooh. He is the co-founder and CEO. They are redefining transparency and trust in out-of-home ads. We just announced a partnership with them. They're the independent verification platform of choice and really cool ad tech company. Hopefully you've heard of them before, but today we're going to give you an introduction. Mo, welcome to the show.
Adam, thank you. Really happy to be here.
And so let's start at the beginning. Maybe what inspired you to start Veridooh? And can you give a little bit of an explanation for like the marketer who isn't technical? They run billboards, they run out of home ads, but they don't really know much else other than the medium and how to do the creative work.
Absolutely. The way Veridooh came about was really through another company that me and my co-founder were trying to launch. We were trying to launch digital signs on top of taxis and Ubers in Australia. And as we sort of, in that pre-launch phase, as we went around to sell the media space, we kept on being asked by the agencies, how do I know if my ad played? And hearing that question over and over again led us to ask ourselves the question, well, how do you know today? Like, if you've spent $1 million on an out-of-home campaign, how do you know it was delivered? And a lot of the times the answers we got back was, oh, we're really not sure, or maybe the media owner can send us a play report, but that's marking your own homework. And it got really interesting when we got challenged by a brand in Australia to say, if you could prove that the ads played, then we would be your first client on your digital taxi tops. And we went away and we built the first proof of concept, which solved that challenge for brands. And 5 years later, here we are as the market leader, independent verification company in the world, which is really exciting. If I had to, explain to a marketer why we exist, it really is to create transparency around the delivery of your out-of-home campaign. If you've spent $100,000, you've spent time briefing, strategizing, and planning. You've gone out and bought it. The next thing you'd like to know is all that hard work that you've put up front has eventuated and what you've bought was delivered. And what we have seen, the outcome of this is we've seen brands and marketers really have more confidence in their out-of-home buyers. And I think giving brands that confidence in their out-of-home buyers then sort of translates into an increase in spend by advertisers when they have that confidence.
Awesome. And so, Mo, can you talk a little bit about like how the technology actually works in just simplest terms for non-geeks of how you guys actually do this on the back end?
Absolutely. I think a really good way to look at it is to actually compare it to maybe what other competitors do as well. And historically, for you to know whether your campaign ran, you would ask the media owner for a proof of play report or a spreadsheet or a document telling you that the campaign had run. I think marketers who spend a significant amount in out-of-home realize that that's not okay, and it sort of fits into your marking your own homework category. And what Veridooh sets out to do and what our technology does is we are 100% independent. And so if you ask a CMO or a marketer, what does 100% independent mean from a verification perspective? It means the verification provider collects their own data, that the data is not being supplied by the media owner. There is no conflict of interest with the media owner. and none of the data that's being collected can be changed or influenced by the media owner or the buyer as well in this instance. And we do that through a patented piece of technology called a smart creative. And essentially what it is the creative is either traffic to Veridooh or traffic using our tool, and a tag. So online brands and advertisers and marketers will know a tag or a pixel. It's similar to a tag or a pixel, but it turns into this smart creative, which we then deliver to media owners who play the smart creative. And that smart creative is passive and self-aware, and understands exactly when it's being played, for how long it's being played, and where it's being played, so on what panel. And so from that, we can then calculate and compare to what was booked in order to give the marketer a clear view around the delivery of their campaign.
Yeah, it's really cool. I like that, similar to how marketers are actually tracking things online. I think it's interesting because for the out of home space, the trust is really important because the dollar figures are so high, and you really want to make sure that the campaign is running as intended. So I think what you guys are doing is really important. How do you approach marketing Veridooh itself, especially as a B2B company? I think for how do you state the problem, and like what are the ways that have worked best for you to grow? Because we have a lot of B2B companies that are listening to this, and I always find listening to a little bit of how other people have grown a company is always really instructive for other marketers to take some inspiration.
Yeah. So B2B, and sort of maybe we define who our clients are. Agencies, brands, advertisers are our clients. How do we talk to them? Very early on, we invested in comms and PR. So I think that's the first thing that we did. We don't do a lot of paid advertising, sort of online paid advertising or anything like that. We have a very clear target audience, and we sort of look at how do we sort of educate, and we use comms and PR to educate, and I think that's the best way. So the best way for us to do it is like really educating. And I think, why is that important? Why do I use the word educate? It's because independent verification is very new. It is a recent sort of innovation in out-of-home. And so a lot of out-of-home buyers maybe haven't had experience in the online world. So whereas independent verification is very well known in the online world, it's new to out-of-home. So I think out-of-home is going through a shift in general around its digitization and being omnichannel and being accepted into the omnichannel sort of family. And yeah, I think education is a huge one. Secondly, we do a lot of, once again, more education at the agencies and talking to them. It's interesting. I think when you speak to a CMO or a head of media, because of their breadth across online and other mediums, if I mention independent verification of out-of-home, it's sort of a no-brainer for them, and that's probably the easier bit. Figuring out a way for them to know that we exist is probably the harder bit. So I think two challenges. If you're unsure of what independent verification does, we're educating. And then there is an audience that knows what independent verification is, but just don't know that independent verification for out-of-home is available.
Yeah, I've seen personally this really interesting split in marketing leadership. You either have leadership that loves tech, loves the internet, is all in, will try new ad techs, will try new software. It's like they get it. And then there's still a large cohort in the marketing sector that it's not that they don't appreciate ad techs and technology. They're just they're just really old school. And, it's like, whereas I grew up in a space where I would just sign up for new software, try it out, no big deal. There's still this other mindset, increasingly fewer, but still exists, where it's like they want to have that, like the handshake deal. They want to go out to dinner. They want to go golfing. And to me, that's always been like something that's like the IT space, right? Like a lot of the CTOs and CIOs like that stuff. Yeah. And I feel like marketing should be more scrappy. I feel like you should, just say yes to startups, get demos, at least kick the tires, because especially like one of the beautiful things about the MarTech and ad tech space is there are so many startups, because there's a lot of people like me. I'm a marketing decision maker. I get to make decisions about what software we try. And I always see it as like, you want to be amenable to the young people building, because it's just, it's so positive. That's how we get innovation in the sector. Yeah. So I don't know if you've seen the same dichotomy where it's like, the kind of old guard versus new guard.
Yeah, and like, just to add to that, there's probably some structural challenges as well within these companies. So maybe less about the people, but maybe how empowered they are to make these decisions. And look, I think sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming, like, just to sort of defend them a little bit. It's a little bit overwhelming about how many new products. Like, when do we try one? When do we test it out? If I go back to maybe put my hat on about how do we market this, and maybe how new startups should market, you really should be thinking about value. How are you adding value to that organization, to that person? And if you can answer that, then I hope the old guard is open to trying new things.
Yeah, I think that the reward for marketing and tech teams that have been early to things, whether you were early to build a Facebook page. When I was a consultant, I built one of the first QSR, quick service restaurant, Facebook pages. We had the first 1 million member page for International Dairy Queen. And I had to take their executive team at the time, like, kicking and screaming into that. They didn't understand why they would want to be on Facebook. And I'm like, there's already 5,000 people that have, Facebook groups for you. That's just upside for you to have it all in one place so you can market to them. And, or if you were early to a cryptocurrency, I just think there's so much reward for trying new tech, and it's just so asymmetric. But to your point, for a business, you should bring value. You should share how you're saving time, saving money, helping do things better, faster, stronger. I do worry in a lot of the AI startup space that they're kind of over promising of how much this can do. Because the technology is really cool and sophisticated, but if you can't make it work with your team's processes, it's not going to be very valuable. So there's, of course, always the over promises.
And you touch on a point about pioneers, right? As a pioneer into a new technology, as a pioneering adopter of a new technology, what kind of benefit do you get? I strongly agree with you. If there is a technology which is valuable and delivers value to you, and you're an agency, and you think, my brand hasn't asked me for this yet, or my client hasn't asked me for this yet, pioneering that and taking that to your client is very valuable, right? It shows that it shows that you're bringing new innovations. It shows that you care about your brand, and by bringing these new innovations and solutions to your brand, it makes you invaluable to that brand. And then on the flip side, the brands that, like you said, that jump in first, the advertisers and brands that jump in first and use this first, are going to have outsized returns. And I see that in verification also. You have to think about, if you're a brand verifying compared to another brand which is not verifying, I can almost guarantee you which campaign is going to be delivered better, right? Just by the fact that you verify. And if there had to be an under delivery, it'd probably be on the one that was unverified. And I think that's, sometimes a hard pill to swallow, but that's the truth, right? So if you're using independent verification first, then the return is going to be bigger. and for a longer period of time.
So that brings us to the fact that we recently partnered. So
Yes.
if you're an AdQuick user, your ads will be verified in yet another way. So what excites you most about collaboration with us and what it means for advertisers?
Yeah. Firstly, you know, I really enjoy working with everyone at AdQuick. I think that's a big call out for me. It's important that you work with people that bring you joy and care about what they do, and are really committed to delivering value to their clients. Right? Like we have the same obsession, with our clients and delivering and listening to our clients. And I think the people at AdQuick that I've met so far have been amazing, and I really that's one thing that excites me about it. And I think it's part of a long-term relationship. If you like the people you work with, it's going to go well. The second thing is I love AdQuick's pioneering nature. We talked about pioneers here, and I see AdQuick is pioneers a lot of technology. Not only do they build their own technology and they're pioneers, but they're partnering with us to make this a standard across all programmatic campaigns, which is great to roll this out across their direct digital out-of-home buys as well. I think, when we did the first trial campaigns with AdQuick, it was very obvious from the first campaign that we were complementary to what you guys were delivering, and we have a similar mission, right? And I think if you have people that you like, you have a similar mission, and you're complementary to each other, then we're gonna drive value to our mutual clients. And I think if we have a principle within Veridooh that says our client's success is our success, and so partnering with someone who can help that and drive that is really exciting.
Yeah, I think so too. And you guys are, I think you guys are trying to bring a very traditional, well, we are too, a very traditional form of media into the digital age. And verification is really important. I think we all share that mission. It's been interesting because I've only been in the out-of-home space for 3 years now, and I come from, I was at Google and I consulted for like Marketo and all these internet first marketing companies. And so this has been like a totally different experience where they're still marketers, but we're kind of operating in a little bit of a different space where for a lot of it's like buying real estate. Really, it's like completely different than buying a web ad. And I think it's better. I say this having worked on online ads. I think the large ad techs have kind of overstepped in terms of like too many ads. They're intrusive. I got an ad the other day in Google search that led me to an obvious phishing and spam website for like a pretty important query. And it's just like apparent to me that they're dropping the ball in a lot of ways. And I don't think online ads are going anywhere. They're going to continue to do billions upon billions of revenue. But for me, it's really apparent that all of the out-of-home ads are just, it's such a great format because when you're in public, out with friends, driving your car, you have focused attention, and you don't have that on your phone when you're second streaming. You don't have that, if you're like watching YouTube videos and just clicking through because you don't want to see the ad. A lot of people just block ads entirely.
Exactly.
And I'm super bullish on out of home. I think it's a clear future of what happens if people are fully ad free or fully ad supported, where it's just gone too far, where what's really left that reaches everyone.
Exactly. I'm really bullish on out of home also. And it's interesting that you say online ads aren't going anywhere. I agree with you on that. But I've been, thinking about how AI will affect search.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting thought about it. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence and recent research showing that people are clicking on links less. You do your search within your chatbot, it'll give you an answer. but you're not clicking through. And it's got me thinking about, how this will affect out of home. I read an article about a week ago by Kieran at I forget the publication's name, but it was around how he believes out of home will go to 100 billion by the end of the decade as a market, because AI will affect search, and advertisers will shift money to brand advertising and try to be available in people's minds. And it got me thinking. I actually wrote a piece about it as well, inspired by that article. So I think that's interesting. That makes me think about out of home.
For listeners, we'll get a link and we'll put that in the show description, because I'm sure people listening will want to read that. For my own behavior, I've noticed things like, I used to want to know how to make a specific recipe. And before I would, query for how to make, a certain type of soup, or, maybe a pico de gallo or something. I'm a really bad cook, so I always have to look it up. And instead of having to go through these pages that were optimized for ad revenue that I find from search, I just ask, I ask ChatGPT, I ask Perplexity, and you just get the answer. And it's just like, for so many things, it's just a better experience to go to AI. And I think Google even knows that too. I mean, they're presenting AI summaries at the top now for a lot of things. So, I think for marketers, I wrote about this on my blog, and I basically just said, look, it's bringing us back to kind of where marketing was initially, where everything is a rented channel. You're going to have to buy ads. And then you're also going to want an email list, right? If all of your updates on social are controlled by an algorithm, you're not going to reach all of your followers. You have to pay for ads to actually reach them. If search is going to go away, it's just going to be something where people go directly for an answer, and maybe for navigational queries. Okay, use Google to go to a brand's website, but it actually takes us back to marketing from the 90s. And in a lot of ways, marketing used to be better. It wasn't this thing that was so growth hacky and trying to extract value and, always at the very end of the funnel. It was this exercise in brand building and building user love and telling these stories across time. And I don't think it's a bad thing for us to go back to that. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world for marketers. So if you are, seeing what's happening with these shifts in AI and you're like really reliant on search, start to work on that. But I think it opens up a lot of different possibilities for your team and your budget.
I'd go a step further, Adam, and say, I think you're positioning in a way that's saying you don't think it's bad if we go back to that. I think it's inevitable that we go back to that. Brand building has been on the rise again. I know there was a huge swing to performance. There's always a conversation about, is brand better or performance better? The simple answer is you need to do both. And if you're just doing performance, then the longevity of that is diminishing. And there's a lot of research around brand and performance together, increasing the ROI of performance. So think of it like a bit of a dolphin. Your brand is there, brand building is sort of consistently there, and it sort of moves you to a new plateau, and your performance gives you that spike, but then your brand gets you to another plateau, which is really what you're after.
Yeah, the largest companies. Can you imagine Coke being built on performance ads? You can't. They're built on brand. So, Apple wasn't built on performance ads. None of the brands you love were built on performance ads. It's like, it's all short-termism. Yeah, it can work for some things, but it's like, that's not how you build like the next LVHM, right? They're not selling on performance.
You hit the nail on the head. Direct-to-consumer direct-to-consumer online brands makes a lot of sense to be kicking off with performance and just figuring out how you get a really clear ROI for every dollar that you spend in the short term. I believe that. I think that's the way you get off the ground for a D2C online brand, right? But at a certain stage, when that ROI starts to diminish with your performance marketing, right? You need to start to invest in the brand, which then allows your performance marketing to hit new heights. And you see it all the time. You see these D2C online brands be performance, and then at one stage they start working on brand, and it really brings them to the front and forefront of people's minds consistently. And a great example of that would be Gymshark. I don't know if you know them. They're from the UK, but there's a bunch of those. Aloe, I would say, was D2C first, performance first, and then now you see their billboards everywhere. And billboards is probably one of the last ways that you can build brand effectively long term. There's a lot of channels are trying to move to performance and just be performance, whereas I think Out of Home does a really great job of brand building.
Totally. The performance stuff is so interesting because for a while there was so much VC money going into a specific performance playbook that, for example, you've heard of Blue Apron, the delivery company. They were paying so much for acquisition. There was a point where you could sign up for Blue Apron, eat for free for a month because they gave you a month of free food. And then cancel the sign up, and then you could do the same thing 3 months later. People figured out this hack and posted it online, and everyone was just getting free venture capital money food. And so this is a performance market. They're paying for this offer, and the problem is you're bringing in a certain type of customer, and that customer may not be a high value customer. You don't really know because you're just incentivizing them, and I feel like it's just something in the kind of ZERP easy money era. A bunch of people built companies that were built on all of this performance ad and values and discounts, and a few did survive. I think DoorDash and a lot of the delivery companies built by having really cheap prices, and then over time they raised prices. So I think that playbook worked in some areas, but in other areas it's just kind of a graveyard of dead companies, penny stocks. It's just a tough thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of, I guess we have to talk about AI because I talk about AI with all my guests. Do you guys have any thoughts, opinions on what AI means, either from a creative standpoint or a process standpoint, from what you're talking to marketers about, or anything you're hearing that's kind of interesting? However you want to answer the AI question, really.
I think I gave you some ideas about how AI is going to affect Out of Home. Indirectly through AI affecting search. I think there's going to be a bucket of media investment that would have gone to search that will be looking for a home, and I think Out of Home should be that home for it. And we're seeing that more and more. So I'm very bullish that AI will create growth opportunities for Out of Home. Secondly, I think AI is, and I'm going to try to relate this to Out of Home as much as possible, my answer. I think Out of Home AI is creating disconnection, and there's a greater need for human in real life connection. And where does that connection happen? We're learning very quickly that connection is not happening on Facebook and on Instagram. If you look at who people are following on Instagram these days, it's celebrities, it's not friends, right? So and there's research on this as well. The number of friends that people are actually following on Instagram has gone down, and it's more celebrities, it's more news, it's more media. And so I believe real connections are built not on your phone and not on your computer. They're built in real life. And you look around, and I think more people are coming out and spending time outside. More people are going to work. And AI is I think fueling a little bit of that feeling that we need to go out and make connections. And so I think at a cultural level, AI is going to get people making connections outside, and it's going to drive more eyeballs onto Out of Home. I see AI as an assistant to humans, not as a replacement. So, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about what we can build, what other tech companies are going to build. I don't see internally AI. I don't see it as a cost-cutting exercise. I see it as a revenue generating ability exercise for us, and being able to do more, so increasing productivity rather than cost cutting. So I'm really excited about that, and excited what the team are building. And so I think, in summary, bullish. AI makes me bullish on out of home. Number two, I think it's going to get more people outside, and number three, I think it's a revenue generator, growth producer, rather than cost cutting exercise for Veridooh internally.
Awesome. Mo, this has been a really great conversation. Can you share where people can go to both connect with you and to connect with the company?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, Mo Moubayed, type it out. You can search Veridooh on all the search channels. Veridooh.com is our website. Happy to connect with anyone that's interested.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll share some links in the show notes to connect with Mo, and we will see you next week for another episode.
Thank you, Adam.